Now, let's talk about Michigan for a second, because they were also one of the, per this article from Pete Nakos, one of the biggest spenders in this past portal cycle. This is sort of terrifying, I think, for college football on a number of levels. One, it's confirmation of what we already believed to be true, like the Bryce Underwood thing happens. But even outside of that, to be playing ball at the high school level and the portal level in NIL, and to be able to win at that level, we mentioned it with Auburn, same thing's true with Michigan. Top 10 class when it comes to the high school level, top 10 class on the portal side. And the reason why this is so, I think, maybe terrifying, like I mentioned, for college football, this is sort of Michigan's answer now as to why you wouldn't go to Michigan, if that makes sense. Like, the reason why you wouldn't go to Michigan is, in some ways, because you thought you had a better chance to develop somewhere else, or you wanted to stay closer to home. But in large part, the main pushback, I think, for Michigan fans at least, was, hey, we're not playing ball at a high enough level for, NIL. Like, people don't come to Michigan because we're not paying them to come to Michigan. It's not the case anymore. That's not the case anymore. So if that's not the case, then why would you go to Michigan? Well, they won a natty in the last 2 years. That's first off. Second off, they just beat Ohio State and Alabama. I mean, they beat Ohio State routinely now, which is their thing, and Ohio State has to change that. You don't have to make this big pitch to make Michigan relevant in the mind of a recruit, portal or otherwise. You see the maize and blue. The logo's iconic. The Hail to the Victors thing is probably, I think, a thing that would be attractive if I'm considering going to a certain school. Like, just the overall vibe around Michigan in of itself is attractive enough. But if you're going to be a top, competitor on the NIL side now, what's happening? What's happening to the talent? The tip of the iceberg factor to me with Sharon Moore is why this is really exciting if I'm a Michigan fan. Because it's sort of a chicken or the egg scenario. You talk about, landing top talent. I was talking to someone on another board here for us here at On 3, a message board, doing like a little Ask Me Anything. I'm going around and doing those on different fan sites. And someone asked us, hey, why aren't we able to land top D linemen like Georgia does? And I'll keep the fan side anonymous for this discussion. But my response was, well, the reason why Georgia lands a lot of top defensive linemen is because they've had a top defensive lineman pretty routinely. Like, people see the product on the field at Georgia at that position, and they want to go repeat and duplicate what they're having because, again, Georgia can make that pitch. That's Michigan right now, y'all. They're putting themselves in position to have the talent on this roster, in future rosters, from recruiting and portal levels, to only equate to more talent and have more success and win more games. And so once that happens, it really is a snowball effect. One of the more subtle notes in this whole discussion around Michigan, Sharon Moore brought in Sean McGee to be a general manager for Michigan. If you don't know that name, he's someone that was instrumental in constructing the roster that ended up going to an international title. Now, he wasn't there for that national title run, but he played a massive part in getting a lot of those dudes on that roster in Ann Arbor from the jump. So the fact that he's in the fold now, and Sharon Moore being the recruiter that he is, this thing is heading one direction. I mean, it genuinely is. And it's interesting, too, when you think about just the overall urgency around Michigan. If we're being real, if I'm an Alabama fan, this is how I would want us to respond to Saban's retirement. Like, Michigan won a national title, I said it, within the last 2 years, and they're acting like this is something that's just like, hey, this is our standard. We have to do this every single year. If we don't, it's a failure. And it was one down year with a new head coach. Nobody at Michigan is excusing that. Nobody's saying, oh, man, that's okay. We had one down year. We'll be back next year. No, it's like we're going to make sure we're doing everything in our power, from Dave Portnoy to Larry Ellison to Larry Ellison's wife. We're doing everything in our power to have a top-tier roster on the field. Anything less than that is not okay. So you're seeing it in the portal. You saw it with Bryce Underwood. Even outside of Bryce Underwood, man, what I have heard and what I've been told is that Michigan now is no longer going to lose on the NIL front when it comes to acquiring talent. That is scary. NIL makes teams relevant. It gets teams that maybe weren't relevant. I said that about Texas Tech. Not that they're not relevant, but like you don't think about them all the time when you talk about teams in the recruiting rankings or transfer portal team rankings or what have you. You think about Michigan as a brand. You recognize what they are. And so they were already relevant on the college football side, but to be relevant now on the portal side and the NIL side and the recruiting side, that's dangerous. That is very, very dangerous. So a lot of things going on in Ann Arbor. A lot of them good if you're keeping track of the talent acquisition over the course of the last few weeks, few months, honestly. And again, I think that this is just the start for what Sherrone Moore is doing out there in Wolverine country.